Well, we're looking at other numbers this morning, numbers on what we had to say yesterday when we went to vote in primary 2020. And we're talking this morning with Dr. Douglas Young, professor at the University of North Georgia. He's been on with us before to unwrap things political. And thank you for being with us again, Dr. Young. I appreciate it. I hope that you're doing well today.
I am. Thank you, sir. Thanks very much, Bill. It's always a real honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Well, appreciate you being with us because I'd like to talk a little bit about a couple of the things that people have really been focusing on, and that's the 9th District, which after Doug Collins decided he wanted to run for Senate, sort of became a free-for-all, and we've had a ton of candidates on both sides. So let's kind of unpack what happened yesterday and what we're going to see coming up in the runoff.
You're right that whenever there's an open seat, that is generally a magnet for a tremendous number of candidates to run for that seat because it's so hard to unseat an incumbent, particularly an incumbent congressman. In recent decades, generally about 90+% of congressmen running for re-election win, and usually easily. So you're right, once Doug Collins decided to run for the U.S. Senate race, we had a whopping 12 candidates, 9 Republicans, and 3 Democrats run for the 9th congressional district seat. And I've lived in Gainesville for 21 years, and I have no memory of there ever being 3 Democrats running for that seat. Not even when Nathan Deal was our congressman.
Right. What do you attribute, not just on the Democratic ticket, but what do you attribute all these candidates going for it? Because, I mean, like you say, 9 on the Republican side, that's unreal.
Right. Well, I think that in addition to it being an open seat, 2020 is a really bizarre year already. I mean,
Yeah.
Just think about what has happened politically. I mean, we had only the 3rd presidential impeachment in our history, and we also had the presidential election, and we had a record number of Democrats running for president this year. We also had this unforeseen COVID-19 situation and this unprecedented U.S. and even global lockdown. And then more recently, we've had the George Floyd killing and all the tremendous fallout in the wake of that. So this is quite an unusual year, and I would not be surprised at most any results. It's a very volatile time. And we also had just a lot of people who I think were ambitious for higher office. Paul Brown Jr., who of course was the congressman from Athens from 2007 to 2015. He was in the race. And of course, Andrew Clyde, another Athenian, who had the backing of the present congressman from Athens, representing the 10th District, Jody Heiss, and of course, Matt Gertler, who's been a very high-profile, unusually high-profile sophomore state representative from Tiger, Georgia, from north of here, and then 9 others. So it's been quite an unusually volatile political year. And gosh, we're not even halfway done.
No, we're not. We have a runoff in front of us, and our guest this morning, Dr. Douglas Young, professor of political science, University of North Georgia. And I got to ask you this: did you think that we knew there was going to be a runoff on the Republican side? Just with that many people in there, just had to be. But
Sure.
Did you think it would be between Clyde and Gertler? Is that who you had your money on?
If I had to bet, yes, sir, because Gertler, I think, had probably the most name recognition, having been a state representative for the last 4 years. And for someone who's only been in the state House for 3.5 years, Representative Gertler has gotten an unusually large amount of publicity because of his reputation as a maverick, really, frankly, probably the leading maverick of either party in the state House. He's earned the nickname of Dr. No because of sometimes being the lone Republican to vote against the rest of the party's members on various bills. He was the one Republican in the state House to vote against Governor Deal's budget. He also, earlier this year, was the only member of the entire state legislature to vote against declaring a public health emergency in Georgia regarding the COVID-19 situation. And he actually came and spoke to the Politically Incorrect Club, a nonpartisan, multiple award-winning group that I sponsor on campus. He spoke to us at UNG about a year and a half ago. And he's very young. He's a North Georgia graduate, very personable, spoke without a note one, and was very generous with his time after his presentation, answering student questions. And he also, as the leading libertarian in the state legislature, it's no surprise that he garnered the endorsement of the most libertarian member of the U.S. Senate, Rand Paul. He also got more libertarian-minded conservative Republican Congressman Thomas Massey's endorsement. And Gertler was a volunteer for the 2008 and 2012 presidential campaigns of Ron Paul. And but Andrew Clyde, wow, he got the endorsement of Jody Heiss, the present congressman from Georgia's 10th congressional district in Athens. My sense is that for the runoff, Clyde will be the candidate of the establishment wing of the Republican Party. I think Gertler will be the candidate of those folks who think that the Republican Party leadership has been too moderate, has been too accommodationist with Democrats. But what's unusual about Clyde being, if I'm accurate, what's unusual about Clyde being the establishment wing of the Republican Party's candidate is Clyde is no moderate. I mean, generally the establishment Republicans tend to be a lot more moderate.
Yeah, I noticed his in his literature and the way he was presented is very conservative. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of moderate in there.
No, I mean, gosh, he's a 28-year Navy veteran, an officer, graduate of Notre Dame. He's owned Clyde Armory gun store in Athens for 30 years. He wants to completely disband the IRS. And I dare say there's no daylight between Clyde and Gertler regarding gun rights.
Or even on taxes. I think they're both kind of dead set against new taxes or are imposing more taxes. I think both of them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So to kind of to wrap this up as we get set for the 11th of August, which is the runoff date. Okay, so these two guys likely in a runoff as it looks now, looking at the numbers at Access WDUN. So do you have one that you think is going to rise above? Well, who do you think the people are going to choose?
The last numbers I saw showed Gertler at 22% and Clyde at 18%. I would hate to bet because that's pretty close, especially at a nine-man field. I can see advantages for both. For Gertler, I still think he's got more name recognition. They both were able to raise over $100,000 in this primary, and actually four other candidates were as well. Gertler also, I think, could get could raise a lot of money nationwide from libertarians, conservatarians, as I like to call them. That's not original with me, but conservative libertarians. I think that he also is very personable. The fact that he's young, I think that helps. But Clyde, wow, I mean, Clyde will certainly get a lot of support from gun owners as well, perhaps from veterans. Clyde also can raise, I think, a tremendous amount of money. If I'm correct, that he's going to be seen as the more establishment candidate running.
I believe he spent most of his own money this time around for the primary. A lot of what his funding was for his advertising was a lot of it out of his pocket.
And that's certainly an advantage, too, because if you spend your own money, legally you can spend as much of your own money as possible.
Yeah, and Gertler, I know, had some PAC money behind him. I think Club for Growth, I think was I think that's the one that sponsored his ads. I heard them enough. I should know, but they were everywhere. But anyway,
advertising was no problem with either. And
no.
I really hope that because they are both so conservative, and this is, of course, one of the most conservative districts in the nation as far as the 435 congressional districts, I really hope that they will both debate because, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my recollection, so often in Georgia, when we have a runoff election after a primary, it's 3 weeks to the day after the primary. But this year, wow, we're not having our runoff for another 2 months, just over 2 months, not until August the 11th. Mm-hmm. And so to see if there is any daylight between these two candidates ideologically or on the issues, I think would be really instructive for the voters, for all of us, if they could have some debates, and maybe WDUN could sponsor them.
That's
I
a
think
thought.
That would be wonderful.
That's the thought. I'll tell you this. It is. We've had an interesting season so far, and it's just about to get more interesting, and that's no doubt about it. And we will have you back as we get closer to the runoff, and then after the runoff, certainly. Dr. Douglas Young, our guest this morning, University of North Georgia, always giving us great political insight. Thank you so much, and continue to be well, stay strong. We'll be back with you, okay?
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here, and God bless you and everybody at WDUN and everybody. Let's all try to stay safe and make a splendid summer.
Yes, indeed. I'm with you on that one. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.